Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Continuing with the stories of the 252 Vaishnava disciples of Sri Gosaiji. Today is day 50 and we are continuing with the story of Haridas. It's Varta number 27, the story of Manik Chand, Haridas's son-in-law. Part 1 continued. Sab Vaishnavan ko Jai Shri Krishna, Shri Vallabhadish ki Jai, Sri Gosaiji ki Jai ho. The Vaishnava addressed the mother-in-law. I have something to tell you, something I must do. Therefore I must go now. I will tell you everything another time. Hearing this, she kept quiet, but she requested him, please pass by the house regularly, so that I might be able to have your sight. No one from the house should speak to you. Yesterday you didn't come, and so this girl did not eat until the evening. Please soon grace us in this way. We are all your servants. The Vaishnava agreed and left. After this, the Vaishnava came past the house every day, and she asked him every day to tell her about his lineage. She asked him for many, many days. One day, Haridas's daughter indicated to the Vaishnava that he should reply to the mother-in-law and that he should say, "What will you do if you learn about our path?" He spoke to her thus. The mother-in-law replied, "Your path is most superior, and I would like to hear about it." The Vaishnava replied, "You belong to another path, so what would you do with this information? We don't usually reveal the ways of this path to those who believe in something else." She then requested him to accept her as his disciple. Therefore, I shall not come regularly. When I have time, I shall come. She replied, "If you tell me where you live, I shall be able to at least greet you with the name of the Lord as I go along my way to fetch water." He again replied, "This will not work. Your situation is difficult. You will be coming with a pure heart, but the people who live here are very corrupted in their minds, and they will tell tales about you to your family. Then they will hassle you. Therefore, I shall come past your house and at least say, 'Jai Shri Krishna.'" Having said this, he returned home. Thereafter, when he had completed his Seva at home, he would come past her house and say, "Jai Shri Krishna." Only after he had done that would she partake of prasad. One morning, that Vaishnava forgot to come past her house. He had prasad and went to work. Haridas's daughter covered up her prasad. When the Vaishnava was at home in the afternoon getting ready for the Lord's afternoon Seva, he remembered that he had not greeted Haridas's daughter that day. When he had bathed and completed his Thakurji's Seva, he came past her house and said, "Jai Shri Krishna," then returned home. Therefore that day it was evening before she had her prasad. Her mother-in-law asked her why she was having her meal so late. The girl told her, "In this village lives my godbrother. I get to see him going past the house every day. I only take my prasad after I have seen him." The mother-in-law praised her, saying, "You are most blessed that you have so much faith in your guru. So from tomorrow when he comes past, to let you see him, then please call me so that I might also have his sight." Haridas's daughter felt very happy to hear her words, because it seemed to her that Sri Gosaiji was influencing her mind for the better, so that she seemed to have affection for the other Vaishnava. The next morning, the Vaishnava came past her house. The girl replied to his Jai Shri Krishna greeting, and then told him the events of the previous day. He also felt happy and said, "Sri Gosaiji is very powerful. He is indeed the Lord himself. It does not take him long to turn an embodied soul's heart in the right direction. It seems that everyone in your house will soon be uplifted." Bhav Prakash. Why? Because the mother-in-law was in fact a divine soul. In the eternal Leela, her name is Kalyani, and she is part of Sri Yamunaji's group. Manik Chand's name is Sumati, who appeared from Ratna Prabha, and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment. He is a devotee of a sattvic disposition. Part 1 continued. Haridas's daughter was most pleased by that Vaishnava's words and said to him, "Through your blessings, all of them will have a good destiny. You are a most accomplished Vaishnava. I can see that Sri Gosaji's great grace is upon me, even inasmuch as my parents abandoned me. If a fly falls into the milk, it can be extracted from the milk, but the milk itself cannot take the fly out. What to do? Both the milk and the fly are dependent on each other. The one whose milk it is, and so it is that the fly can be separated from the milk. When a female child is born, she is dependent on her parents, and she is thereafter dependent on whomsoever she is given to in marriage. But what can the father and mother do? They are bound up in the clutches of time. They become fearful of what the world will say about them, and so cannot keep a grown-up girl at home with them. However, all of them are tied into the hands of the Lord. He holds very tightly onto the thread between himself and his own souls, and never lets them go. He causes them to come into contact with those whom they need to meet, just as Sri Gosaiji caused me to meet you. Sri Gosaiji is the Lord and therefore very compassionate." Hearing her words, the Vaishnava was overjoyed and said, "After all, she is the daughter of Haridas, the very person who brought about the upliftment of the king, as well as of all the inhabitants of Meraka. Yes, she is his daughter. It is not a surprise that her intelligence is as pure as it is." The girl then said to her mother-in-law, "That Vaishnava has come to say Jai Shri Krishna to me. I have asked him to take a seat. Would you like to have the chance to meet him, or should he go home?" The mother-in-law was glad to hear this, and blissfully came to have the sight of that Vaishnava. As she saw him, she bowed low at his feet and said, "This daughter-in-law of mine has uplifted her whole family." She then asked again, "Our daughter-in-law has not revealed her path to us. Will you please explain it to us?" The Vaishnava looked at Haridas's daughter, and she signalled him not to say anything. Bhav Prakash, by withholding such information, the intention was to increase the mother-in-law's desire to know. Her wish to learn could only be fruitful when her desire to know would be intensely increased. This is why the daughter-in-law said no. Part 1 continued. The Vaishnava addressed the mother-in-law. "I have something I must do, therefore I must go now. I will tell you everything another time." Hearing this, she kept quiet, but she requested him, "Please pass by the house regularly so that I might be able to have your sight. No one from the house should speak to you. Yesterday you didn't come, and so this girl did not even eat until the evening. Please soon grace us in this way. We are all your servants." The Vaishnava agreed and left. After this, the Vaishnava came past the house every day, and she asked him every day to tell her about his lineage. She asked him for many, many days. One day, Haridas's daughter indicated to the Vaishnava that he should reply to the mother-in-law and that he should say, "What will you do if you learn about our path?" He spoke to her thus. The mother-in-law replied, "Your path is most superior and I would like to hear about it." The Vaishnava replied, "You belong to another path, so what would you do with this information? We don't usually reveal the ways of this path to those who believe in something else." She then requested him to accept her as his disciple. He replied that he was not in the habit of making anyone at all into his disciple, and that the person who could initiate her as a disciple was Sri Gosaiji, who lived in Gokul. Also that she would be able to be initiated when he next travelled on that route. She pleaded with him over and over again, and he finally said that their path was known as the Vallabhi path, the way of Sri Vallabhacharyaji. She was so happy to hear this, and then said, "Please write a letter to Sri Gosaiji, and I will arrange for one of my men to take it to him. He will bring back the reply." The Vaishnavas then wrote a letter to Sri Gosaiji, and it was sent with one man to Sri Gosaiji in Gokul. The man delivered the letter. In reply, Sri Gosaiji gracefully replied, "You should take this letter and use it to initiate all of that family's members with the Lord's name. In a short time I will be travelling to Dwarkaji." He gave the letter to the messenger, and he came back with it to Manik Chand's house. He then gave this reply letter to his mother. She put the letter on her head out of respect and called the Vaishnava to come there. Having found out that a letter had come from Sri Gosaiji, he enthusiastically went to their house. Manik Chand's mother handed him the letter. The Vaishnava bowed down to the letter and touched his head with it and then read it. After reading its content, he kept quiet, and after exchanging a few words, came home. That night, when he had completed his Thakurji's Seva, he came to Sri Haridas's daughter. He read out the letter to her. She felt very happy. The Vaishnava asked her for her thoughts on the letter. She said that she would reply on this subject the next day. He went home and she spoke to her mother-in-law. "Oh, mother-in-law," Sri Gosaji's letter has arrived. Some instructions have been given to that Vaishnava, as I have read. Now this matter is in his hands. The mother-in-law felt very disappointed and fell at the feet of the girl, saying, "That Vaishnava has concealed the letter from me, and that too on your instruction. Please take our sincere supplication to him, so that we might all be uplifted." With this, the daughter-in-law recognized that her heart's intention was pure, and said that she would put her request to that Vaishnava. The mother-in-law kept quiet. The next day, when Vaishnava came to see her, she piped up. Her sentiment for Sri Gosaji is now purified. Do now as you deem fit. She discussed several other aspects of the situation, and then invited the Vaishnava to come to her house and made some supplication on behalf of the mother-in-law. Hearing these, the Vaishnava told them all to bathe. He placed Sri Gosaji's letter on a low stool in front of them, and according to Sri Gosaji's instructions, initiated all of them with Jai Shri Krishna and went home. The next day they all asked him to explain the rules and appropriate behaviour to which they should now adhere. He replied that their daughter-in-law would tell them everything they needed to know. Thereafter, they all asked her before doing anything in the house. They did exactly as she was told, and by them. And Haridas's daughter was such an accomplished Vaishnava and the recipient of the path of grace. Bhav Prakash. This story teaches us that a Vaishnava should remember Sri Gosaji's feet in times of great difficulty. This is because taking shelter in him alone immediately perfects all actions. He is most compassionate and considerate to the devotees. The other message here is that it's just a tiny bit of association of an accomplished Vaishnava can naturally bring about upliftment. Therefore it is important to have a guileless and affectionate feeling towards Vaishnavas. One should believe what they say. The path of grace brings fruition through the Vaishnavas alone. Therefore one should consider Vaishnavas to be very important. Companions and keep their association. Part 1 continued. After some more time had passed, Sri Gosaji travelled from Gokul to Dwarka to have the holy sight of Sri Ranchorlalji. He came close to that village and set up camp close to a well. At that time, Haridas's daughter had come to the well to fetch water. A Brajwasi boy also went to that very well to fetch water. She asked him whose camp it was, and he replied that it was Sri Gosaji's. Hearing this, she was filled with excitement and rushed home to store that water. Then she told her mother-in-law, "Sri Gosaji has set up camp in a garden near here. Please come with me if you would like to have his sight." Having said this, she left in a very happy mood. She could see Sri Gosaji's form from afar. She could see Sri Gosaji from afar and watched him as she approached. At that time he was sitting on a low stool and bathing from the waist down. He caught sight of her as she approached in a very animate way, her mind totally focused on his lotus feet and her body resembling a paper puppet, being borne by the wind. Sri Gosaji saw her coming in this way, and he also very enthusiastically put on his wooden sandals and came towards her. He held her hand in his and stopped in front of her, saying, "Oh, my dear girl, where are you going? I was bathing in the camp, but I left there to come to see you." As he held her hand and stood close to her and spoke to her, she came back to awareness. She came back to awareness and lay herself down at his feet, crying profusely. Sri Gosaji consoled her and led her back to his camp. He again spoke to her. "Oh, my dear girl, you have been very patient. You are Haridas's daughter. I have come here on my way to Dwarka solely to see you. So now why lament? I was worried about you. That is why I came here. You should give up all anxiety and sorrow now. I shall continue on my journey only when you are happy for me to go." In these ways Sri Gosaji consoled her. She then supplicated, "Oh, Maharaj, only you can console me in this way. It is only with your grace that I have had this perseverance. Otherwise there is no place for me to rest in this whole universe. My parents threw me into the middle of the worldly ocean. However, by taking refuge in you and by sitting in the boat of your name, I have been able to cross that ocean and arrive at the other shore. I understand your great grace on the day when I met this Vaishnava. I thought to myself, see, the Lord has not abandoned you. Now the accomplished Vaishnava who lives nearby comes every day to speak of the Lord and greets me with his name." Thus she humbly spoke her mind to Sri Gosaji. He was very happy to hear this. And after this, Sri Gosaiji completed his bath and was applying his forehead mark when the Vaishnava arrived there to have his sight. He bowed down to Sri Gosaiji and offered some donations, then stood up in front of him. Sri Gosaiji invited him to sit down. The Vaishnava bowed again and sat in front of Sri Gosaiji. Shri Haridas's daughter praised the Vaishnava profusely to Sri Gosaiji, who was glad to hear this. Then all of Haridas's daughter-in-laws came there and began to sing her praises to him. They said, "O Maharaj, we have attained to your lotus feet solely through the auspices of this our daughter-in-law. Otherwise, what would idiots like us know about your form? This daughter-in-law is like the light of our family." They all began to praise her to Sri Gosaiji. After this, Sri Gosaiji finished applying his tilak and went to start the preparations for cooking. They were all sitting there. Sri Gosaiji made the offerings and came outside. Then Manik Chand and all the others supplicated, "O Maharaj, please bless us by initiating us with the Lord's name." Sri Gosaiji told them all that he would do so the next day. They all bowed to him and took their leave. The next day they all got up very early, and after asking their daughter-in-law how they should do it, they all bathed and went to Sri Gosaiji, bowing down. Sri Gosaiji initiated them with the Lord's name and then told them all that they must fast that day. Bhav Prakash. The reason for this is that they were all Jains and were not fully aware of the necessary rules of behaviour, and they thought, therefore, they had to fast. So we conclude today's reading for day 50, and tomorrow we'll continue with part 1 continued. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.